The record player hisses before it sings. A single lamp, a dust-covered sleeve pulled from a milk crate at the back of a closet. 5 men in matching suits, frozen mid-harmony on the cover, smiling like nothing was ever wrong.
Thought I heard your voice yesterday.
Somewhere between that smile and the day the group stopped speaking to each other, a soul band destroyed itself from the inside. Not the label, not the radio, themselves. Tonight, 10 betrayals that took down some of the greatest voices soul music ever produced. Men and women who built something beautiful together, then tore it apart with their own hands. Subscribe now. Because the story that ends this list will leave you sitting in silence. The countdown begins now. Number 10. The Chi-Lites, Oh Girl.
Be in trouble if you left me now.
Chicago, 1976. A studio hallway at Brunswick Records, empty except for one man standing outside a locked door with a check in his hand that doesn't add up to what he was promised.
Tell me what am I gonna do?
Eugene Record wrote the sound that made the Chi-Lites a household name. Oh Girl, Have You Seen Her? Ballads so tender they became the backbone of 1,000 slow dances. But tenderness on record didn't translate to fairness in the ledger.
Who to see it?
By the mid-1970s, Record had grown tired of watching a sound he built enrich everyone except the men singing it.
They say, let the woman take care.
He walked away for a solo career, certain the group needed him more than he needed them. He wasn't entirely wrong, but he wasn't entirely right either. Because the men left behind didn't fold. They kept touring under the name that had made them famous, cashing in on a legacy their former leader had authored without him in the room. When Record returned in 1980, he expected to walk back into his own group. Instead, he found a version of the Chi-Lites that had learned to survive without him, and a business relationship so fractured that reconciliation never fully arrived. The reunion sold records. It didn't repair what had already broken. What fans heard as a comeback was, underneath, two camps that had stopped trusting each other years earlier, bound together by a shared name and separated by everything else. The harmony on stage was real. The harmony backstage never fully returned. The fight over who legally owned the name Chi-Lites outlived the group's commercial relevance by decades. Competing lineups toured under nearly identical branding well into the 2000s. Each claiming to be the real thing, while the man who wrote their signature songs spent years fighting in court just to keep his own legacy from being sung by someone else. And if you think a fight over a name is ugly, wait until you hear about two brothers who spent 30 years refusing to share a stage, even though they used to share a microphone. Number 9. The Delfonics, Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time?
I do it, baby.
Philadelphia, decades after La La Means I Love You first drifted out of car radios.
Didn't I blow your mind this time?
2 flyers, 2 venues, same city, same night. One says, the Delfonics. The other says, William Hart's Delfonics. Neither man is willing to call the other and ask why. William Hart and his brother Wilbert built one of the most delicate falsetto sounds in soul history together. A voice so fragile it seemed like it could shatter mid-note, and somehow never did. Behind that fragility was a business relationship that cracked long before the fans noticed. Royalties, credit, control of the name. The same wounds that split so many groups of their era split the Hart brothers too, except theirs never healed into even a distant peace. For years, both brothers toured versions of the same group, singing the same falsetto ballads that once made them inseparable, now performing them as strangers who happened to share blood and a catalog. Audiences bought tickets assuming they'd hear the same voices from the record. They didn't always know which brother they were getting, and for a long time, neither brother much cared what the other one was doing on his night off. The songs never stopped meaning what they meant. Didn't I blow your mind this time? Still made rooms go quiet. But the two men who built that sound spent more years apart than they ever spent together. Proof that a falsetto built on tenderness can still be sung by two people who no longer speak. For long stretches, William and Wilbert Hart didn't just avoid collaborating, they avoided each other entirely, communicating through lawyers and managers rather than conversation. Two brothers separated by a dispute so old that neither camp could always agree on how it started. That kind of quiet, cold rupture is one thing. What happened to the group at number 8 was louder. A courtroom battle over a single name, fought in front of the very fans who'd made that name worth fighting for. Number 8. The Stylistics' Betcha by Golly Wow. A theater marquee somewhere in the 1990s reads, The Stylistics, direct from Philadelphia. Fans line up outside, certain they know exactly who they're about to see. Half of them are wrong. Russell Tompkins Jr. had the voice that carried Betcha by Golly Wow and You Make Me Feel Brand New into the upper register of soul's most romantic era, a falsetto so pure it felt engineered for heartbreak. But a lead voice, however extraordinary, is still only one voice in a 5-man group, and eventually, the other men behind him wanted their names remembered too. As the years wore on, disagreements over money, billing, and who actually had the right to call themselves the Stylistics split the group into competing versions, each insisting they carried the group's true legacy forward. Lawyers got involved. Trademarks got contested. Fans who'd loved the group since childhood found themselves buying tickets without knowing which lineup, if any of the original members at all, would actually be on stage that night. The music hadn't changed. The harmony on those old records was as tight as anything soul ever produced. But the men who made it had stopped agreeing on who deserved to keep singing it, and the legal fallout outlasted most of their original run together. Multiple groups performed under the Stylistics name simultaneously for years, a direct consequence of unresolved trademark disputes, meaning fans who thought they were reliving a piece of their youth sometimes paid full price to watch a lineup with none of the men who'd originally recorded the songs they came to hear. But at least the Stylistics were still, technically, all men fighting over a stage. What happened to the group at number 7 was a woman fighting to stay visible in a band she built with her own hands. Number 7. Klymaxx, I Miss You. Los Angeles, 1984. A drummer sits behind her kit in rehearsal, watching a room full of musicians she personally recruited slowly stop looking at her when the cameras are on. Bernadette Cooper didn't just play drums for Klymaxx. She assembled the group, piece by piece, an all-female funk and soul band built at a time when almost no one in the industry believed women could write, produce, and perform their own material without a man standing behind the console. When Meeting in the Ladies' Room and I Miss You turned Klymaxx into genuine stars, the spotlight didn't land evenly. It landed on the singers out front, and the woman who built the machine found herself standing further and further from its center.
Thought I heard your voice yesterday.
Tension over credit and visibility built quietly at first, then not quietly at all. The group Cooper had founded began treating her less like its architect and more like an obstacle to the image the label wanted to sell. By 1985, she was gone from the band she created, a founder pushed out of her own foundation, replaced in the story before the story had even finished being told. Klymaxx continued without her. Some fans never fully understood why the woman who launched the group had disappeared from its history, her fingerprints still all over the sound, her name slowly edited out of the credit. Later retrospectives on Klymaxx have often minimized or omitted Bernadette Cooper's role as the group's founder entirely, an erasure that mirrors a pattern across soul and funk history. The architects behind the scenes, especially women, quietly written out of the legacy they built with their own hands. Being pushed out of a band you built is one kind of betrayal. What happened to the group at number 6 was a family, actual blood, turning a stage name into a lawsuit. Number 6, the Isley Brothers. That Lady. A holiday dinner table, somewhere in the early 1980s, where 3 men who share a last name have stopped passing each other the salt. The Isley Brothers had survived nearly every era of black music since the 1950s, evolving from doo-wop to R&B to funk to slow jam royalty. Expanding from 3 original brothers into a 6-piece family powerhouse by adding younger brothers Ernie and Marvin, along with brother-in-law Chris Jasper, into the fold. For a while, 3 plus 3 felt unbreakable, a family act proving that blood could be the strongest contract in the music business. But contracts written in blood still get read by lawyers. As the group's catalog grew, so did disagreements over songwriting credit and how royalties were split among founding brothers versus the younger additions who'd helped build the group's later sound. In 1984, the tension broke the family apart. Ernie, Marvin, and Chris Jasper left to form Isley Jasper Isley, a new group built explicitly outside the shadow of the two original brothers who remained. It wasn't a stranger stealing from the band. It was family, deciding that shared blood didn't guarantee a shared understanding of what fair looked like. The split reshaped an empire that had once seemed too tightly bound by kinship to ever fracture. Proof that the closer the relationship, the deeper the wound when the money conversation finally happens. The dispute that split the Isley family wasn't over a scandal or a public feud. It was over the quiet, unglamorous math of songwriting royalties. The kind of dispute that never makes headlines but has ended more musical families than any public betrayal ever could. If blood couldn't hold a band together, imagine what happens when a record label decides one voice in the group is worth more than all the others combined. That's number 5. Number 5, Rufus, Tell Me Something Good. A recording studio in 1975, and a name change quietly appears on the next single's label. Not Rufus. Now it reads, Rufus featuring Chaka Khan. Nobody in the room remembers voting on it. Rufus had built a genuinely collaborative sound. Funk, soul, and rock woven together by a group of musicians who considered themselves equals. Then a young singer named Chaka Khan joined the lineup, and her voice on Tell Me Something Good and Sweet Thing did something no one in the band could fully control. It made her, individually, a star in a way the rest of the group could never quite match. The label noticed. The credit line changed. What had once been a band became, in the eyes of the industry, a singer with accompaniment, a shift the rest of the musicians never fully agreed to and never fully accepted. Resentment simmered through years of hit records, tours, and award nominations that increasingly framed Khan as the story and the band as the backdrop to it. By the late 1970s, the gap between Rufus and Chaka Khan had become too wide to hold together under one name. She stepped fully into a solo career, leaving behind musicians who had helped shape the very sound that made her famous, and who watched the industry finish the job of separating them that a single unauthorized name change had started years earlier. The featuring credit that split Rufus wasn't a mutual band decision. It was a label calculation about which name sold more records. A business decision imposed on the group that quietly told the other musicians, in print, exactly how replaceable the industry considered them. Number 4, The Gap Band, You Dropped a Bomb on Me. A hotel room, years after You Dropped a Bomb on Me, had made the Wilson brothers unavoidable on every radio dial in America. Charlie Wilson sits alone, and the silence in that room says more about the cost of fame than any of the hits ever did. Charlie, Ronnie, and Robert Wilson built the Gap Band into one of funk and soul's most reliable hitmakers, a run of records so infectious they still fill dance floors decades later. But behind the grooves was a business relationship strained by the same pressures that end so many family acts. Disputes over money, credit, and control that built up quietly across years of success. Then came a different kind of collapse. Charlie's addiction to crack cocaine, which he has since spoken about publicly and candidly, pulled him away from the group and, for a time, away from a stable life altogether. The band that had once seemed too commercially unstoppable to fall apart found itself sidelined not by a single dramatic betrayal, but by a slow accumulation of financial disputes and personal crisis that never got resolved in public, only endured in private. By the time Charlie found his way back to sobriety and a celebrated solo career, the Gap Band, as the world had known it, had quietly stopped functioning as a working unit, its brothers bound more by history than by any ongoing partnership. Charlie Wilson has spoken openly in later years about periods of homelessness during his addiction, a stunning private cost hidden behind a public catalog of songs still played at nearly every cookout and wedding reception in America. Proof that a band's biggest hits and its members' darkest years can exist at exactly the same time. What happened next is one of the most quoted firings in soul music history, a story fans still argue about, because the man who got fired never stopped trying to walk back through the door. Number 3, The Temptations, Ain't Too Proud to Beg. Detroit, 1968. A limousine pulls up outside a small venue, and a single man steps out alone, dressed like he's about to headline a stadium the group hasn't booked. David Ruffin had the voice that carried Ain't Too Proud to Beg and My Girl into the stratosphere, a rasp so commanding it made the other 4 Temptations sound, at times, like his backing vocalists rather than his equals. That imbalance became the group's undoing. Ruffin's growing drug use and increasingly erratic behavior, missed rehearsals, late arrivals, demands that the group's billing reflect his individual stardom,
with no sense of pride, but
pushed the other members to a breaking point they'd been quietly approaching for months. In 1968, they made the decision to fire him, choosing the group's survival over one man's spotlight.
'cause I wanna keep you any way I can.
Ruffin never fully accepted it. For years afterward, he reportedly showed up at Temptations concerts uninvited, at times attempting to walk onto the stage and join the group mid-performance, unable to separate his identity from a band that had already moved on without him. It's one of the most haunting images in soul music, a legendary voice standing in the wings of a show he used to headline, waiting for a door that would never open again.
And each day it grows more and more.
The Temptations survived the loss and kept charting hits with new lead voices. But the image of Ruffin outside those venues, still convinced he belonged inside, became its own kind of cautionary tale about what happens when a group's biggest asset becomes its biggest liability.
I have to sleep on your doorstep all night and day.
Ruffin's attempts to rejoin the group on stage after his firing weren't isolated incidents. They reportedly continued for years, a public unraveling that turned one of soul's most talented voices into a symbol of what happens when ego and addiction convince a man the group can't survive without him, right up until it clearly does. Everything up to this point has been about money, ego, and pride. What comes next is different. It's about a family that never got the chance to be a normal family at all, because the world needed them to be a hit machine first. Number 2, the Sylvers' Boogie Fever. A living room decorated for a photo shoot, 9 children arranged by height, all smiling on cue for a magazine cover that will convince America they're the happiest family in music. Behind the lens, the truth was more complicated than any single photograph could hold. The Sylvers turned youthful energy and undeniable talent into hits like Boogie Fever and Hotline, a family group marketed as wholesome, joyful, and effortlessly close. What audiences couldn't see was the pressure placed on children who were, in many cases, still children. Years of performing, touring, and being managed within a tightly controlled family business that some members have since described, in later interviews, as far harder than the smiling album covers ever let on. Fame came fast, and so did financial complications that left less in the family's hands than the group's commercial success would suggest. Several members have spoken since about the strain of growing up under constant public performance and family-run management, a burden that shaped their adult lives long after the hits stopped climbing the charts. The group never had a single explosive, headline-making implosion the way some bands on this list did. Instead, it faded the way families sometimes fade. Quietly, unevenly, each member carrying a different private account of what those years actually cost them. Behind nearly every wholesome family group of the 1970s soul era was a business structure that gave children limited control over their own earnings and image, a pattern the Sylvers' story reflects. Proof that the most dangerous betrayals in music aren't always committed by strangers in the industry. Sometimes they happen at the family dinner table. And now, the story that ends this list. The one betrayal on this countdown that didn't just end a band's career, it ended a life, and then it ended another. Number 1, Zapp, Roger Troutman. More bounce to the ounce. Dayton, Ohio. A recording studio built by one family, for one family. Humming with a sound nobody else in funk and soul had ever quite captured. A human voice pushed through a talk box until it sounded like the future of music itself. Roger Troutman built that sound. His brothers built the business around it. For years, that partnership made Zapp one of the most influential acts in funk history. The DNA, of more bounce to the ounce, running through decades of music that came after it. But a family business is still a business, and business disagreements between brothers can curdle in ways that outside partnerships rarely do, because there's no contract that can fully separate blood from money once both get tangled together. Reports and accounts from those close to the Troutman family describe rising tension over the years surrounding the band's finances and direction, the kind of quiet strain that had already ended other groups on this list through lawsuits, walkouts, and cold silence. For Zapp, it ended differently. On April 25, 1999, Roger Troutman was shot and killed by his brother Larry outside the studio the family had built together. It remains one of the most devastating tragedies in soul and funk music history, a family bond that didn't just fracture under the weight of business disputes. It broke in the most permanent and irreversible way music has ever recorded. Every other betrayal on this list ended a partnership. This one ended two lives, and with them, a sound the world never got to hear finish evolving. Roger Troutman's talkbox innovations went on to shape hip-hop and R&B for decades after his death, sampled and referenced by artists who never got to work with him directly, meaning the most influential thing Zapp ever built kept growing long after the family that created it had been destroyed from within. 10 bands. 10 different ways the same story kept repeating. Talent alone was never enough to survive what happens when trust runs out. Every betrayal on this list started small. A name change, a missed conversation, a check that didn't add up.
Playing tricks on me.
Like letters mailed to a future none of them could see coming, each quiet decision eventually arrived somewhere none of them wanted to be. If tonight's countdown moved you, tell us which betrayal hit hardest in the comments, and subscribe. Because we are not done uncovering the truth behind soul's greatest voices. The music never lies, even when the industry does.